Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are delighted to share with you different stories of love and betrayal from around the world. So let us begin our storytelling journey today. In late autumn Milan, the air was suffused with a subtle chill. Thaddeus stood in the center of the hotel banquet hall, holding a bouquet of roses, waiting for their fifth wedding anniversary celebration to begin. Around him were his wife Imogen's family and friends, while his own relatives and friends were few and far between. This anniversary celebration had made him uncomfortable from the start, but he never anticipated what was about to happen. Imogen arrived nearly an hour late, obviously carefully dressed up, but with no trace of joy on her face. She walked straight to Thaddeus, took out a stack of documents from her handbag, and forcefully threw them against his chest in front of everyone. "This is the divorce agreement. Sign it." Imogen's voice was cold and harsh. The whispers in the banquet hall came to an abrupt halt, all eyes focused on the couple. Thaddeus looked dazedly at the documents scattered on the floor, the roses slipping from his hands. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Imogen let out a cold laugh, her expression as if she were looking at a complete failure. "We're done. My father is going to promote Callum to replace you. Do you know why? Because he's 1,000 times better than you." Thaddeus felt dizzy, unable to believe his ears. Callum had been Imogen's college boyfriend, and 2 years ago, Imogen's father Lawrence had recruited him to the company as financial director. Thaddeus had always believed it was a coincidence, but now everything made sense. Imogen's mother Marjorie stepped out from the crowd with an undisguised look of disgust. "Pack your garbage and get out," Marjorie said harshly. "You were never worthy of my daughter. Look at you, wearing that outdated suit, driving that broken-down car, living in that old house in the so-called historic district." Lawrence also approached and patted Thaddeus on the shoulder, a gesture full of condescending pity. "Tomorrow, clear your desk and leave. Don't worry, you'll get severance pay according to regulations." He turned to the guests and announced loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the unpleasantness tonight. Let's change this to a celebration of the beginning of Imogen's new life." The music resumed, and people quickly returned to their conversations, as if the previous scene had been an insignificant episode. Thaddeus stood there alone, feeling profound humiliation and betrayal. He silently left the banquet hall. No one saw him off, not even noticing his departure. 3 years earlier, Thaddeus first met Imogen at a party during Milan Fashion Week. At that time, Thaddeus had just returned to work in the family business, assigned to an inconspicuous position in the legal department. Although Thaddeus's family had 200 years of history and deep influence in the textile industry of northern Italy, in recent decades they had chosen to operate discreetly. They concentrated their energies on product quality and maintaining industry standards, rather than blind expansion and pursuit of profit. Imogen was the marketing director of New Rich Lawrence's family enterprise in Milan, in charge of promoting the group's many brands. She was radiant, loved socializing, had over 100,000 followers on Instagram, and frequently appeared at various celebrity parties and fashion events. The meeting of the two was pure coincidence. Thaddeus attended the party in place of his sick superior, intending only to make an appearance and leave. Imogen was introduced to him by the protagonist of the evening, a French designer. "This is Thaddeus. His family's fabrics are the soul of our new collection," the designer introduced. Imogen slightly raised her eyebrows, evidently curious about this traditionally dressed young man. "Textile industry? Sounds very traditional," she said with a somewhat mocking tone. "Yes, very traditional," Thaddeus calmly replied, taking a sip of champagne. "My family has been in this business for 200 years. 200 years? Goodness, you surely need some innovation," Imogen said, laughing. Thaddeus wasn't angry, but instead revealed a mysterious smile. "Sometimes, the best innovation is to uphold values that have stood the test of time." This statement piqued Imogen's interest. In the conversation that followed, Imogen was surprised to discover that this seemingly ordinary legal employee had a profound understanding of art, history, and literature. Moreover, his manner of speaking revealed a rare composure and elegance. The relationship between the two developed quickly. Imogen was attracted to that quality in Thaddeus, so different from the people around her. He didn't chase trends, didn't flaunt wealth, yet had an inner confidence and peace. Thaddeus, for his part, appreciated Imogen's vitality and passion for beauty, though sometimes he would shake his head at her frivolity and addiction to social media. 6 months later, they held their wedding. At the insistence of Imogen's father, the wedding became one of Milan's social circle's grand events of the year. An 8-page wedding report appeared in the most well-known local lifestyle magazine, and photos of Imogen's wedding dress received a record number of likes on social media. However, life after marriage wasn't as perfect as Imogen had imagined. Thaddeus refused to accept Lawrence's offer to serve as an executive in his company and continued to work in the family business. They lived in Thaddeus's ancestral apartment which, although located in a prime location in the historic district, seemed to Imogen too outdated, lacking the flamboyant style of a modern mansion. "Why don't we move to a high-rise apartment in the new district? The views are amazing, and there's 24-hour butler service," Imogen often proposed. Thaddeus always gently refused. "This building contains our family's memories. Every brick has a story. New isn't necessarily better." Imogen found it difficult to understand this sentiment of Thaddeus. In her upbringing, new, shiny, and expensive things were always the most desirable. Her father Lawrence had started with a small clothing store and, through keen business acumen and bold investments, had built a business empire spanning real estate, retail, and catering in just 20 years. "You know, when my father acquired his first shopping mall, some advised him to buy those old factories in the suburbs, saying they had historical value," Imogen said at a dinner. "He chose to build new shopping centers, and now it's the most profitable place in the entire city. Sometimes, you have to learn to let go of the past to grasp the future." Thaddeus simply ate dinner in silence, without rebuttal. He knew they had fundamental differences in how they viewed the world, but he always hoped that time and love could bridge these differences. In the second year after the wedding, Lawrence's business group decided to undergo a major organizational restructuring. As a son-in-law, Thaddeus was arranged into the legal department. Imogen hoped her father would give Thaddeus a director-level position, but Lawrence only placed him in an ordinary legal manager role. "He needs to learn from the ground up," Lawrence explained. "Observe him for a while. See if his ability and ambition are enough." Thaddeus didn't complain about this, taking every task seriously. However, his low-profile style and cautious attitude toward the company's aggressive expansion strategies made Lawrence and the executives value him less and less. "He just lacks resolve." Imogen often heard her father evaluate Thaddeus. "Business requires the courage to take risks, a desire to conquer. He's too content with the status quo." Imogen initially defended Thaddeus, but as time passed, she also began to doubt her choice. She saw peers on social media showing off mansions, luxury cars, and lavish vacations, and looking at her own life, inevitably felt a sense of being let down. It was at this time that Callum appeared. Callum had been Imogen's college boyfriend. They had broken up due to differences in values. After graduation, Callum worked in investment banking, accumulating rich experience in finance and investment. 2 years ago, Lawrence recognized Callum's talent and network and recruited him with favorable conditions to be the financial director of the company. At first, Imogen maintained a polite distance from Callum, but with frequent contact in various company meetings and events, plus interactions on social media, the old spark between them was gradually rekindled. Callum was recognized as the perfect man in Imogen's social circle. He excelled at work, dressed fashionably, knew how to showcase his lifestyle on Instagram, and owned the latest Porsche model and residence rights in one of the most upscale apartments in the district. But beneath this glossy surface, Callum also had his own calculations and ambitions. He never made investments that lost money, including emotional investments. Approaching Imogen again was for him both satisfying personal desires and a strategic move to consolidate his position in Lawrence's company. By comparison, Thaddeus's lifestyle increasingly appeared dull and boring in Imogen's eyes. He preferred spending weekends hunting for books in old bookstores or studying historical documents in family archives, rather than attending those celebrity gatherings that could increase social capital. Imogen began finding all sorts of excuses to be alone with Callum. Initially, just work meetings and discussions, later developing into private lunches and dinners. Callum was very aware of Imogen's position in the company and family, carefully planning each date, ensuring they were private enough, yet stylish. "You deserve a better life," Callum told Imogen during a dinner. "Look at your Instagram. You were born to live in the spotlight, not to be buried in that antique-like lifestyle." Callum wasn't purely interested in Imogen's beauty or social status. He appreciated her market intuition and social abilities, considering her the perfect life partner. They could complement each other in business affairs and shine together in social occasions. Unlike those socialites who only knew how to spend money without knowing how to earn it, Imogen had a rare business mind. Deep in her heart, Imogen knew what she was doing was betrayal, but she couldn't resist that feeling of being valued and understood that Callum gave her. Thaddeus seemed never able to understand her yearning for success and social recognition, while Callum completely understood her ambitions and desires. The turning point occurred during a company executive trip. Lawrence led the core team to Monaco to attend a yacht exhibition and incidentally discuss investment plans for the next year. Thaddeus didn't accompany them because he had to handle some family business matters. Under Monaco's dazzling night sky and the effect of champagne, Imogen completely abandoned her moral restraints and had a relationship with Callum. After returning to Milan, their secret dates became increasingly frequent, and Imogen's lies also increased. Thaddeus began to notice the changes in his wife. She came home later and later, her participation in family life drastically decreased. Her emotions fluctuated dramatically. Sometimes she was extremely cold to him, sometimes unusually warm, seemingly out of guilt. "Are you very busy with work lately?" Thaddeus gently asked during a dinner. "It seems like it's been a long time since we've properly talked." Imogen avoided his gaze and casually replied, "The marketing department is always busy, you know. Several new projects are at critical stages." Thaddeus didn't press further, but he began to pay more attention to Imogen's words and actions both in the company and at home. He noticed that Imogen had set a new password for her phone, and her social media accounts were no longer as open to him as before. What puzzled him most was that Imogen and Callum seemed to have developed a kind of tacit understanding. The glances they exchanged in meetings and the brief private conversations revealed an unusual intimacy. Callum also became increasingly confident about this relationship, almost reckless. He began to hint at his special relationship with Imogen within the company, thereby consolidating his position. Lawrence turned a blind eye to this. As long as it didn't cause a public scandal, he didn't care about his daughter's private life, especially when her partner was an executive he valued. Thaddeus wasn't unaware of the problems in his marriage. He tried various ways to salvage it. He proposed traveling together, gave her gifts she liked, even offered to participate in social activities he normally wasn't interested in. But Imogen seemed to have already made up her mind, responding coldly to Thaddeus's efforts, often finding excuses to decline his arrangements. Meanwhile, the situation within the company was also quietly changing. Thanks to his expertise in the financial field and close relationship with Lawrence, Callum's influence grew increasingly. He began to participate in more strategic decisions and even meddled in the legal department's work, making Thaddeus's situation increasingly awkward. On the eve of their 5th wedding anniversary, Thaddeus heard shocking news from an old employee of the company. Lawrence was planning to reorganize the legal department, and Callum would likely take over the position of legal director, which meant Thaddeus would report directly to his wife's lover. Thaddeus decided to confirm this news directly with Lawrence. Lawrence didn't deny it, but rather straightforwardly expressed his stance. "Thaddeus, I've always admired your cultivation and knowledge, but businesses need enterprising talent." Lawrence paced in the office. "Callum has brought real value to the company. He understands the market, knows how to utilize networks, and most importantly, has ambition and determination. Are you suggesting I should voluntarily resign?" Thaddeus calmly asked. Lawrence stopped and turned to face Thaddeus. "That depends on you. But if I were you, I would seriously consider whether it's suitable to continue in this position. After all," he paused meaningfully, "sometimes it's difficult to balance family and career." Thaddeus understood Lawrence's implication. He already knew about Imogen and Callum and condoned this relationship. This was a double blow to Thaddeus. Not only was his marriage betrayed, but his professional dignity was also stripped away. Just the day before the wedding anniversary, Thaddeus received information through the family's old butler. Imogen had secretly consulted a divorce lawyer and planned to formally propose divorce on the anniversary day. Thaddeus's world collapsed in an instant. He had thought the problems between him and Imogen still had room for reconciliation, but now it seemed everything was too late. The humiliation on the wedding anniversary night became a turning point in Thaddeus's life. After leaving the hotel, he didn't return home, but drove to the family's old mansion in the suburbs. This mansion, built in the 19th century, was now rarely inhabited. Only a few elderly butlers and gardeners still maintained it. Rain pattered against the old windows of the mansion, making soft tapping sounds. Thaddeus sat in his grandfather's study, silently looking at the family photos hanging on the wall. In these yellowed photographs, he saw the tenacious gaze of several generations. He saw the family's ups and downs through tumultuous history, and also saw that unspoken dignity and honor. From a young age, Thaddeus had been taught the family motto: true strength lies not in ostentation, but in silence. For years, he had lived following this principle. Even when marginalized in the company, despised in social occasions, he never complained or counterattacked. But now, the public humiliation from Imogen and her parents made him realize that sometimes silence is only mistaken for weakness. Once certain boundaries are crossed, dignity must be defended with action. The phone on the table kept vibrating, but he didn't bother to check. Those were messages from Imogen and her family, probably triumphant victory declarations or additional humiliations. Thaddeus didn't want to hear those voices anymore. In the dim light of dawn, Thaddeus made a decision. He picked up his phone and dialed a long and used number. "Hello, Mr. Tobias." Thaddeus's voice regained its steadiness. "Yes, it's been a long time. I think it's time to accept the family committee's proposal." On the other end of the phone, Tobias was the current chairman of the Textile Industry Association of Northern Italy, and also an old friend of Thaddeus's family. Months earlier, the association had proposed that Thaddeus take the position of legal advisor to the association, but at that time Thaddeus had politely declined to avoid potential conflicts of interest with Lawrence's enterprise. "I'm glad you've changed your mind, Thaddeus." Tobias's voice conveyed satisfaction. "The family committee has always believed you are the most suitable person. As for the situation you mentioned, we'll handle it. The textile industry has hundreds of years of history in this region. We have our own rules and methods." After hanging up the phone, Thaddeus felt an unprecedented calm. He was no longer that son-in-law at others' mercy, but had returned to his true identity. He was the heir of a family with deep background and resources, a person who understood how power truly operates. Over the next 3 days, Thaddeus seemingly disappeared. No one knew where he had gone or what he had done. Imogen and her parents initially didn't think much of it, assuming Thaddeus was just licking his wounds, hiding in some corner feeling sorry for himself. However, on the morning of the 3rd day, everything changed. In Lawrence's office, the atmosphere was heavy as lead. On his desk were scattered several urgent reports and notifications, each bringing devastating news. "This is impossible." Lawrence angrily pounded the desk. "How can it be so sudden? Yesterday, everything was normal." His assistant stood at the side, face pale. "The largest Italian supplier just notified us that they will terminate their contract with us, citing internal policy adjustments. At the same time, the operating licenses for our 3 stores in France have been temporarily suspended by the local government for further review needed." Lawrence's phone suddenly rang. It was his bank manager. From the other end came even worse news. The bank had decided to tighten its credit policy for the group. It demanded repayment within 30 days of a huge loan that was supposed to mature at the end of the year. "This is a conspiracy," Lawrence almost roared. "Someone must be orchestrating all this from behind." Just then, his daughter Imogen burst into the office, her face full of panic. "Dad, Callum is gone. His office is empty. All his personal belongings are cleared out. I just called him, and the prompt says this number has been deactivated." Lawrence felt dizzy. Callum wasn't just the company's financial director. He also held many of the group's core business financial secrets. If he took this information to a competitor, the consequences would be unimaginable. "Check his social media accounts," Lawrence ordered. Imogen quickly opened Instagram, but discovered Callum's account had been set to private and had removed all content related to her. She also checked LinkedIn and Twitter, with equally disappointing results. All displayed latest updates stopped 3 days ago. "It's like he just disappeared," Imogen murmured, with disbelief in her voice. At that moment, Lawrence's legal advisor hurriedly entered the office with a stack of documents. Mr. Lawrence, we just received an investigation notice. Someone has reported to the Financial Regulatory Authority that there may be financial improprieties in our recent major transactions. Given the seriousness of the report, the regulatory body has already initiated a preliminary investigation procedure. Lawrence's face instantly turned pale. He knew very well that, even if the report's content was eventually proven false, such an investigation would bring huge reputational damage and business disruption to the company. Moreover, under Callum's operation, the company had indeed operated in some gray areas. Who? Lawrence's voice was hoarse. Who reported us? The legal advisor shook his head. The report was submitted anonymously, but according to our internal contact, the reporting materials are very professional, including a large amount of internal documents and financial data. Imogen suddenly thought of something. Her eyes widened. Thaddeus. Could it be Thaddeus who did all this? Lawrence scoffed. Impossible. He doesn't have that kind of power. He's just an ordinary legal employee, not even a director. To shake our business, you need real power and a network of connections. Imogen recalled what Thaddeus had once said at a dinner. When someone asked him why he didn't accept better positions, he just smiled and said, "True power often hides in unseen places." At the time, she considered it an excuse, but now she felt a chill. Later that day, more bad news arrived. The group's most profitable shopping mall suddenly experienced a series of technical problems, causing a complete power outage for 3 hours. An important fashion magazine published an investigative report questioning the manufacturing techniques and material sources of the group's brands. Several well-known designers, citing personal reasons, suddenly terminated their collaboration with the group. All this came so suddenly and with such precision, like a series of meticulously designed strikes aimed directly at the group's vital arteries. Upon learning of these news, Marjorie immediately rushed to the company. "This must be Thaddeus's doing," she exclaimed as soon as she entered the office. "We should call the police." Lawrence shook his head. "Call the police? On what grounds? We don't have any evidence that these things are related to him. Each blow seems to occur independently. All have seemingly legitimate reasons. Suppliers have the right to choose clients. Banks have the right to adjust credit policies. Media have the right to publish investigative reports. But it's too coincidental." Marjorie almost screamed. "We must contact Thaddeus, find out exactly what's going on." Imogen sat exhausted on the sofa. The blows of the past few days had left her haggard. "I've already tried to contact him, made over 20 calls, sent countless messages, all with no response." Imogen recalled those initial arrogant messages she sent. "I don't need you anymore. I have a better choice. You'll never understand my worth." And then, as the situation worsened, her tone gradually shifted to doubt and suspicion. "Is this your doing? Why?" Finally, even to pleading, "We need to talk. Please, at least give me a chance to explain myself." Callum was also completely out of contact, which made Imogen even more devastated. She had thought they were truly in love, were soulmates, a more compatible couple than she and Thaddeus. Now it seemed she was just a pawn in his career plan, ruthlessly discarded once the situation turned unfavorable. Lawrence's assistant again entered the office, with an even graver expression. "Mr. Lawrence, I just received news that the Textile Industry Association has issued a statement. They will conduct an industry self-discipline review of recent improper business behaviors in the market, especially against those enterprises that pursue short-term benefits at the expense of product quality and industry reputation." Lawrence's expression grew even more somber. Although the Textile Industry Association seemed to be just an industry organization, in practice it wielded enormous influence. They could influence raw material supply, technical standard setting, and even government regulatory policies for the industry. "Find out Thaddeus's whereabouts," Lawrence ordered, "at any cost." Thaddeus sat by the window in the meeting room of the Textile Industry Association, looking at the cityscape outside. Compared to 3 days ago, his appearance had markedly improved, the confusion and hurt in his eyes replaced by a cold determination. Tobias walked into the meeting room with a document in hand. "All procedures have been completed. From next Monday, you'll be the chief legal advisor of the association." He placed the document in front of Thaddeus. Regarding the other matter, things are progressing faster than expected. Lawrence's enterprise is already feeling the pressure. Thaddeus nodded slightly. Thank you for your help, Mr. Tobias. Tobias waved his hand. This is not just about helping you, Thaddeus. People like Lawrence have always been a cancer to our industry. They don't respect tradition, don't understand the essence of manufacturing, only know to pursue short-term profits and superficial glamour. Your family has contributed to this industry for 2 centuries, while they are nothing but a passing cloud. Thaddeus picked up his phone, looking through the countless missed calls and message notifications. Imogen, Lawrence, and Marjorie had left him nearly 88 messages in various forms over the past 3 days. From initial commands and threats, to later doubt and suspicion, to finally entreaties and pleas. He opened one voice message. Imogen's tearful voice came through. Thaddeus, please, at least tell me what happened. If this is your doing, why are you doing this to us? We can talk. There must be a solution. Thaddeus calmly deleted this message, then the next one, and the next, until all unread messages were cleared. He felt no wavering or compassion for these messages, because he clearly remembered that cold look in Imogen's eyes in the banquet hall and that pronouncement, "We're done." Are you going to reply to them? Tobias asked. Thaddeus shook his head. There's no need. I've already instructed my lawyer to formally submit divorce papers to Imogen. As for Lawrence and his enterprise, I trust the market will give them a fair evaluation. Tobias looked admiringly at Thaddeus. You're more resolute than I imagined. Many people in this situation would soften or be troubled by guilt. The moment they threw the divorce agreement in my face, humiliating me in front of everyone, this relationship was already over. Thaddeus's voice was so calm, it was almost frightening. My only mistake was not seeing their true nature earlier. In Imogen's apartment, the atmosphere was so heavy it was suffocating. Since the company crisis erupted, she had barely left home, unable to face the external rumors and those once eager now avoiding friends. Her phone vibrated. It was a message from her best friend. Have you seen the latest news? Callum was spotted in the UAE. Reportedly, he's already accepted a position with an investment company there. Attached was a photo showing Callum in casual attire, standing by the poolside of a luxury hotel in Dubai, with a svelte female model beside him. The photo was captioned, #NewLife, #NewBeginnings, #FocusOnSelf. Imogen felt nauseous. Callum hadn't just abandoned the company at the first sign of crisis. He had abandoned her too. All those sweet words about love and future were just his means of attaching himself to Lawrence's family. Once the edifice began to totter, he immediately chose to save his own skin. The most ironic thing was that Callum seemed to have completely put the past behind him and started a new life. While she was trapped in this chaos she had created herself, unable to extricate herself. Her phone vibrated again. This time it was a call from her father, Lawrence. Imogen, we've found Thaddeus. Lawrence's voice had an unusual nervousness. He's now the chief legal advisor to the Textile Industry Association. What? Imogen could hardly believe her ears. Isn't that a very high position? How could he? Do you know what the Textile Industry Association is? Lawrence interrupted her, his tone extremely serious. On the surface, it looks like just an industry organization, but in reality, it controls the lifeblood of the entire northern Italian textile industry. Those old families we thought had long declined, they're all core members of the association. Thaddeus's family holds a pivotal position in the association. Imogen felt dizzy. But he never mentioned. Of course not. Lawrence smiled bitterly. That's the style of these old families. Outwardly low-key and modest, actually possessing far more resources and influence than we imagined. I just spoke with several banking friends, only to learn that Thaddeus's family is actually one of the largest shareholders of the bank. Imogen's voice began to tremble. So everything that's happened these days, all orchestrated by him. Lawrence's voice was full of defeat, not acting directly, but through those invisible relationship networks. Not a single action can be traced directly to him, but every strike is terrifyingly precise. Silence stretched at both ends of the phone. Finally, Imogen softly asked, "Dad, what should we do?" Lawrence sighed deeply. "I've already contacted several respected members of the association, hoping to find a path to reconciliation. But frankly, The situation doesn't look promising. Our credibility has been severely damaged. Partners are withdrawing en masse. Stock prices continue to fall. If the situation continues to deteriorate, we might have to consider selling some assets to weather the crisis. After hanging up, Imogen sat alone in the darkness, letting tears flow freely. She finally understood Thaddeus's silence and patience over all these years. It wasn't due to cowardice or inability, but because he possessed a kind of strength she had never truly understood. The kind of power that needs no flaunting or showing off, yet can determine fate at crucial moments. She picked up her phone, tried calling Thaddeus once more, but still received that cold voice message. The number you have dialed is temporarily unreachable. A month later, Milan's business landscape had undergone a drastic change. Lawrence's business group was forced to sell most of its assets to repay debts. Almost all high-end stores had closed. Lawrence himself had also disappeared from public view, reportedly busy dealing with various legal and regulatory investigations. Marjorie's boutique was also affected, with a sharp drop in customer flow, forcing her to resort to major discounts for promotion. Those socialites from her social circle who once treated her with reverence now avoided her like the plague, fearing being implicated in this business scandal. Marjorie's social media no longer displayed those luxury parties and celebrity photos. Instead, there were occasional family dinner photos and nostalgic content, as if trying to rebuild some traditional values she once sneered at. Callum's new life in the UAE wasn't going well either. His background and resume underwent rigorous scrutiny. Some suspected falsified parts were exposed, leading to a drastic reduction in his position and salary. Worse still, several controversial transactions he had handled during his time in Italy were facing judicial investigation. He could be required to return to the country to assist in the investigation at any time. Callum began to understand that the real business world isn't just about the surface glamour and the successful person image on social media. Behind those seemingly outdated traditions hides a kind of power he had never truly understood or respected. That kind of influence, tempered by time, based on reputation and relationship networks. But this realization came too late for him. His professional career had already been indelibly stained, and his social circle gradually shrank, leaving only similarly opportunistic speculators. Imogen, for her part, had completely disappeared from social media. Her once prized Instagram account, that photo wall showcasing luxury life and perfect marriage, was set to private overnight, then simply canceled. She moved out of the apartment she shared with Thaddeus, returning to her parents' significantly downsized residence. The most painful thing for Imogen wasn't the decline in material conditions, but that she began to realize how grave her mistakes had been. She hadn't just lost a husband who truly loved her, but also lost respect for herself. She began to ponder what had turned her into such a shallow, easily tempted person. Was it her parents' way of upbringing, the influence of social media, or the emptiness in her own heart? But regardless of how much she questioned, one thing was clear. Thaddeus had forever left her life, and in a way she had never anticipated. He wasn't that poor abandoned man, but a man with deep background and power, someone she had never truly known. Meanwhile, Thaddeus's life and career were heading in a completely new direction. As the chief legal advisor to the Textile Industry Association, he participated in a series of important industry standard-setting and international cooperation negotiations. His professional ability and family background earned him widespread respect in the industry. There were even rumors that he might assume a high-level position in the association in the near future. In his personal life, Thaddeus chose solitude. The divorce proceedings had been smoothly completed. He moved back to the family old mansion and began repairing and renovating this building bearing family history. In his spare time, he would walk in the ancient garden or read those precious family archives in his grandfather's study. One afternoon, Thaddeus received an unexpected visitor notification at work. The visitor was Lawrence, the once imperious business tycoon, now a fallen businessman. Lawrence looked much older, the sharpness in his eyes replaced by fatigue and a sense of defeat. He stood in Thaddeus's office, awkward, as if completely transformed into another person. "Thank you for agreeing to see me, Thaddeus." Lawrence's voice was low and humble, very different from his previously arrogant tone. Thaddeus simply nodded, gesturing for him to sit. There was no triumph in his eyes, no vengeful satisfaction, only a calm serenity. As if this man who once humiliated him now had no relation to him whatsoever. "I believe I owe you an apology," Lawrence began with difficulty. "For my arrogance, for my daughter's betrayal, and for my misjudgment of you." Thaddeus looked at him calmly, showing no obvious emotional fluctuation. "Apology accepted. Anything else?" Lawrence took a deep breath. "I want to ask for your help. Not for myself, but for those employees still working in the group. They are innocent, shouldn't pay for my mistakes. Specifically, our last store is facing license renewal issues. If it can't be successfully renewed, over 30 employees will lose their jobs." Lawrence's voice was full of entreaty. "I know the association has influence in this aspect." Thaddeus thought for a moment, then took out a paper and wrote down an address and a name. "Go see this person, tell him I sent you. The license issue can be resolved, but on the condition that you must strictly comply with industry standards, especially in supply chain management and labor conditions." Thaddeus did this not out of compassion or forgiveness, but out of basic respect for innocent employees and consideration for the overall healthy development of the industry. In his view, revenge was never the goal, but merely a means to restore balance. Lawrence received the paper with great relief and gratitude. "Thank you, many thanks. By the way, Imogen has always hoped to see you once more, even if it's the last time. She has some words she wants to say to you personally." Thaddeus's expression hardened. "There is nothing more to say between Imogen and me. Please tell her I wish her well in the future, but our paths have completely parted." Lawrence nodded, not pressing further. Before leaving, he paused, looked back at Thaddeus. "You know what? The most ironic thing is that until I lost everything, I never truly saw what was most valuable. It's not the surface glamour and fleeting success, but things like your families that withstand the test of time, reputation, principles, and true power." Thaddeus didn't respond, just watched Lawrence leave. When the office door closed again, he turned toward the window, looking at Milan's skyline in the distance. Sunlight shone on ancient buildings and modern skyscrapers, forming a harmonious yet contrasting picture. A few days later, Thaddeus received an email from Imogen. The email included a photo. It was a photo of them in front of the church on their wedding day. Back then they looked so young, so full of hope, as if the whole world was at their feet. The body of the email was very brief. "I know an apology is meaningless now, but I hope you know that I deeply regret what I did. Wishing you all the best. Imogen." Thaddeus looked at the photo and email for a long time, then gently closed the email without replying. In his heart, there was neither hatred nor love, only a peaceful release. That past relationship and the betrayal and pain that followed had become history. On the road ahead, there would no longer be Imogen's figure. Callum's subsequent life also confirmed the consequences of his choices. His position in the UAE was soon terminated due to poor performance. He tried to contact some former business partners for help, but was diplomatically rejected by all. That once brilliant, promising financial elite had now become a toxin everyone in the business circle avoided. Half a year later, media reported that Callum had been extradited back to Italy for investigation of suspected financial fraud. When police escorted him into court, his once handsome face was full of vicissitudes, and in his formerly confident eyes remained only fear and bewilderment. Imogen's life also continued, albeit in a completely different direction. She abandoned social media and those superficial social activities, starting to work in a small art gallery. Her income was much less than before, but she seemed to have found some inner peace. Sometimes, when passing by the historic building where she once lived with Thaddeus, she would unconsciously slow her steps. She would recall those quiet moments she once disdained, but now sorely missed. However, no matter how much she missed it, that door had forever closed. Thaddeus had begun a new life, and in a world she could never reach. He didn't need her repentance, didn't need her tears, and certainly didn't need her love. In his world, there was no longer a place for her. Thaddeus's career in the Textile Industry Association was flourishing. Using his legal expertise and family influence, he pushed forward a series of industry reforms, raised product quality standards, improved labor conditions, making the entire northern Italian textile industry vibrant with new life. In his office, There were no longer any photos or items related to his past marriage, as if that history had been completely erased. Like those ancient buildings in Milan that have weathered centuries of storms yet still stand tall, Thaddeus went through the storm of betrayal, but emerged stronger. He was no longer that old-fashioned guy looked down upon by his wife and in-laws, but became a respected leader in the industry. A person who truly understands traditional values and can transform them into modern competitiveness. As for those who once betrayed and humiliated him, they must face the consequences of their choices, just as he had to face the pain of trusting the wrong people. That is the fairness of life. Everyone eventually reaps what they sow, be it sweet or bitter. If this story resonated with you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating content. Looking forward to seeing you in our next story.